I guess it's been almost 20 years now. The bishop called me in to have a conversation one day. I kind of knew what might be up, and so I'd been in prayer and discernment about it for a while. And sure enough, I was right. After the chit chat, he extended an invitation to interview in any one of the three largest congregations in our synod, all of whom were without called pastors at that period of time. And for a variety of reasons, I went through each one and eliminated myself, either for lack of a sense of calling or not possessing the gifts that I perceived that congregation to need. I ended the conversation at that point with, "But if you want me to interview in any one of those, I will, because you're the bishop." He said, "Well, I thought you would say that." He got up, changed chairs, and then began a strange conversation about restructuring the synod, restaffing, and all kinds of different priorities, all of which I'd heard multiple times as a member of synod council. What was this all about? And then in the midst of the conversation, he said, "Well, I would like you to consider serving on staff as one of the assistants." At that moment, I could hardly keep from drooling. It was perfect. It fit into my plans, just the way I knew God would make it. I could stay in my beloved grace. I could keep my family intact, in place. They wouldn't have changed schools at a critical time of their lives. My wife could have a full-time call. And above all else, it was another stepping stone to God's plan to make me bishop. I said I would consider it, knowing already probably my answer. And the answer in the end was yes. And little did I know what that yes would mean for my life. It has been a wild ride. It is morphed into new positions with new responsibilities. It has caused me to examine my call and myself in ways that I would just as soon not have had to look at. It has challenged me beyond belief. It has stretched me in ways I didn't think I could bend. It has caused me to acquire new gifts and to lean heavily on gifts that I hadn't used for a long time. It has taken me to places of great frustration and anger, and not just a few tears. And in the end, I'm still not bishop. Be careful what you ask for. As so often is said, if you want to make God laugh, just tell him about your plans. I learned the hard way. James and John had plans. And why shouldn't they? Along with Peter, they were the insiders in Jesus' discipleship group. They'd always been there when Jesus wanted to do something special. They were the ones there, called out again and again. How many times do we hear, and Jesus took Peter, James, and John? Yeah, they had reason to believe. They had priorities. And so they made plans. And they expressed those plans to Jesus one day. Jesus, when you come into your kingdom, when you achieve what you have set out to do, can we have the good seats? The ones on your right and your left. The seats of power and authority. Jesus, do you know what you're asking for? Oh, we can handle this. We can drink the cup. Yeah. Little did they know that the seats of honor were already occupied. They would be occupied by two criminals, one on his right and one on his left, as all three hung there on crosses on a place called the Skull, outside the walls of Jerusalem. And in the end, similar fates would await James and John as they continued to follow the way to a kingdom that didn't look like the kingdom that they had imagined. And how often does that happen in our lives? In the midst of our nicely crafted plans and dreams, our visions of what the world should look like, everything gets turned upside down by an illness or a death or a lost job, a divorce, an election that doesn't go our way. Suddenly our worlds are flipped upside down. And we wonder, how could this be? So often we believe that our plans are God's plans. And when they don't play out that way, we start wondering, what's this all about? And did God forget me, abandon me, change God's mind? One of the exercises I do regularly when I do front porching is to have people sit down and graph their life out, highs and lows. It's an opportunity to do some self-reflection. And inevitably, during one of the breaks, somebody will come and say to me, this moment in my life was the darkest time. I didn't think I would make it through. I wasn't sure I wanted to make it through. And yet now, as I look at my whole life, I realize that everything that came after that event would never have happened in the way that it happened, or happened at all, if it hadn't been for that dark moment. And I wouldn't want to change all this. And so is it a high or a low? In the midst of our carefully called plans, God intervenes in ways that we simply cannot fathom, to take us where we need to go, where we need to be, to grow, to learn, to make a difference in the world. To follow Jesus is not a stroll in the park, but it is a gift from God. And wherever that journey may take us, God will be with us, continuing to give us what we need to have life for ourselves, for the church, for the world. And so, as we make our plans, Just listen for the laughter. Would I change my answer knowing what I know now? Not in the least. And do I regret never becoming bishop? Not for a moment. Sometimes God knows what we don't. Thanks be to God. Amen.